What's up, Porch Nation? Welcome back to Porch Nation headquarters here in Worcester, Massachusetts. No relation. It was week 13 here in the Greatest League, aka Deja Vu Week 2, our second of 3 all-division weeks to end our 2022 regular season. What can I say that I haven't already? We had a huge week here where, with just 1 week to go after this, we saw division lead changes, our biggest shakeup in the playoff projections so far, and a back-and-forth battle for the highest score of the week. We finally hit that point in the season where things are becoming very clear, though we saved a little drama for the finale. Only 16 more regular season games left to cover. Here's half of them. Let's get into it.
Come one, come all to a beautiful show. It's gonna be awesome and some other stuff. Some other musical stuff. What you doing, buddy?
Week 13, the penultimate regular season week, offered finally so much playoff clarification, but also left us with a lot of confusion. I'll try to explain why everything falls the way it does, and I'll remind you week 14 just may have all we need to arrive at a simpler answer anyway. So let's start building the story of what brings us to the mess we're currently in, and we'll start in the East Division where both matchups had huge implications. Since week 9, Dylan has been odd man out in the playoff projections after having led the East just the week prior. He's come on in a big way in the subsequent weeks, and now with a little faltering from Josh, we arrive at one of our most storied rivalries with a lot on the line. Pete will be the first to tell you his team has seen some struggles this season, but as of last week, he still had a path to the playoffs. And either way, a Dylan versus Pete head-to-head is always a big one. Unfortunately for Pete, as has been the case pretty much all season, if Lamar does well, so does Pete, but also vice versa. Well, with Lamar's early exit in this game, and possibly for the remainder of the season, Pete scored about half as many points as Dylan in this one. The other East matchup set the stage for our most impactful final week showdown, as Josh Marshall continued to try to stay ahead of Dylan for another week. Well, Jeff had other plans. In a rare occurrence, Josh had several big point players falter, and Jeff saw great performances from some of his running backs, and especially Tyler Lockett. He snags his third win and evens things for the anti-Browns battle the final week with Deanna. Josh and Dylan now have the same record, and Dylan won their earlier head-to-head, so Dylan goes from leading the In the Hunt race to leading the East Division. On to the South Division, where a new streak takes over, and our wild card race heats up even more. So Skinner locked up the division last week, but he could still win his way to the first seed. Meanwhile, Andy had a path to the playoffs, provided he gets a little help from teams in the way. Well, although luck didn't provide losses to all those teams ahead, this win pulls Andy 1 game away from 500, and he's tied for the league's longest win streak of 3 games. This loss knocks Skinner out of the first seed contention since Burge has the head-to-head tiebreaker. The other South matchup had been He Brewing since week 1 and continues to highlight Steiny's strong second half. Adam was the class of the division last year and was projected to squeak out a win here, but Josh would not be denied. He even outpaced me for highest score of the week for a time before the Tampa defense came back down to earth. Josh rebounds from last week's loss to snag his first division win of the 2022 campaign, and this loss will dash any hope Adam had of sneaking into a wildcard spot. At 8-5, and with some notable head-to-head tiebreakers, this win not only keeps Josh in the conversation, but as you'll see in the playoff projections, it does much to muddy the wildcard race. Speaking of the highest score of the week back and forth, let's head out west. Listen guys, not to brag or anything, I don't think I've ever presented our highest score of the week. Be jealous. Well, this week would change that. I came into this game with a 3-1 division record. Greg Coffin came in with a 1-3 division record. That one on my loss column, and in Greg's win column came in week 1, our first head-to-head. Also, coming into this week, Greg's path to the playoffs was through winning his last 2 games and me losing my last 2 games. A series sweep would have given him the tiebreaker against me, but I guess you could say I put the final nail in the coffin with this win. What can I say, buddy? I'm only using what I'm given. The other West Showdown featured the old third floor RA versus CA, or now should I say CA versus TX, or Just RC versus AA, whatever. Alex comes into this one on a bad streak of sub 100 games, and Ross comes in looking to improve his 500 division record and potentially wildcard standing. Unfortunately for Alex, this one ends up sub 100 game 5 in a row, and Ross takes this by over 11 points. A combination of losing to me 2 weeks ago and me winning this week will keep Ross from taking the top spot in the West this year, and the wildcard bunch offered no help either, but now consolation bracket seeding is being set. Now on to the North Division, where our drama for the week, and maybe even for the season, truly peaked. In the Dunbarton Bowl Part 2, both Zanellas had standing and pride on the line. A win for D would stave off a battle for last with Jeff, and a win for Steve, with some help from teams ahead in the standings, could sneak him into a wildcard spot. This week's showdown ended up being almost a reverse of their Week 1 game. They'll split this season's series, and Steve takes this one, making him our only 7-6 team, and maybe the only team left with a chance at a wildcard spot not currently at 8-5. And now, our Game of the Week. It'd be hard to find a more marquee matchup this season, until next week, as this one had huge implications for the North Division, and the fallout sent waves through the wildcard race. Joe came into this one with a head-to-head tiebreaker over Burge and a win streak in divisions spanning seasons. Despite their tiebreaker, Berg held a one-game lead in the North and in the playoff seeding race. Projections looked definitive, but everyone on Joe's offense except Josh Jacobs underperformed, and Berg saw enough to exceed his projections by over 11. This would be enough for Berger to secure first in the North, and with Skinner's loss, first overall for the 2022 season. Congratulations. Here's where it gets real crazy. Despite a great campaign so far, leading the wildcard pack since projections first came out, and taking only his first in-division loss in 2 seasons, head-to-head tiebreakers are enough that Joe slips all the way to our 7th seed and is now on the outside looking in on the wildcard race. Josh Steinberg beat some important teams early in the season, including Joe, to tiebreak his way to the 6th seed, and Josh Marshall beat Josh Steinberg earlier this season to get the 5th seed. Keep in mind, Dylan and Josh Marshall play this final week, and Josh Steinberg has a tough game slated against Andy, so this all may look more straightforward when the chips fall. But as for now, we see our biggest wildcard shakeup so far. To summarize, Josh Marshall beat Josh Steinberg, and Josh Steinberg beat Joe. And Joe and Josh Marshall did not face off this season. So this is where we are. So let's take a look at what that shakeup looks like in our playoff projections. So there we go. Week 13 was a wild one. I swear I must have poured over those tiebreakers a dozen times, and I couldn't believe it myself. We've got this last week to see how the JJJ kerfuffle settles out. Not only is Josh Marshall mixed in with this wildcard jumble, but he's fighting for the division against Dylan. This is some high drama, folks. Since we're already through the Thursday game, I can tell you that Joe's off to a hot start. Steiny has a tough projection against Andy, and Dylan and Josh Marshall are projecting to come down to 5 points or so. But neither of those games had Thursday players, so the fun begins on Sunday. And with that being said, let's give it one last push to the playoffs. Until next week, keep thriving, Porch Nation. Bloop.